Welcome to Bartelle's Money Talk, your go-to podcast for financial empowerment and insight. Let's dive in. I have to ask this question. Why do so many young adults feel broke even with a good income?
It's really because they just haven't had the education. There's nothing that I think innately is different other than no one really taught them the way. And that's really what we tried to do with our book, is just give them a guidebook on what you need to do to save money and not be living paycheck to paycheck.
I mean, how many times I have witnessed somebody coming out of college, maybe 5 years in the workforce, making, let's say, 100,000, even 200,000, or a physician making 400,000. And if you spend what you're earning, you're broke.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, audience, welcome to Bartelle's Money Talk. I'm Johnny. And today we have some wonderful guests here. We have Steve and Mark. Could you please introduce yourselves and give us a little background?
Steve Short, half of the book writing partner of The Simple Road Toward Financial Freedom, which came out about a year ago. My background, I was in the corporate world for about 30 years. And then after retiring, I saw firsthand with my children not learning really any personal finance skills in school. And I was a little bit taken back by that and thought there was a big opportunity after looking for books and things like that. Got together with Mark, who's a friend of mine, who's a financial advisor, and he said, let's write a book. And so that's what sort of started the road that we're on to the Simple Road Toward Financial Freedom, which is a real passion project for us.
Mark Schlipman. I'm from Illinois. And, you know, when I graduated from college, I got out, obviously, started spending money like we just talked about. And I found myself in a very curious situation within 2 years after graduating. And then I figured it out. You know, maybe my car payment should not be more than my house payment. And drove the car for 10 years, straightened some things out. And the more you get educated in financial topics, because I was not raised with all this knowledge. And I met Steve. Our boys were both in the same fraternity as freshmen. And we started talking about financial principles. And he's very astute. And I was kind of surprised because most people that are not in the business are not speaking what the language that we talk about and doing the principles, and how he instructed and taught his kids how to save and do some basic principles. And I think he was equally as shocked when I told him that I work with very successful business owners, retirees, and they too just don't get it. And I find it very similarly with all age brackets and income brackets, that sometimes they just don't have the confidence to put themselves out there if they don't know something, because they could be a really good physician, a really good contractor, a really good business owner, but that doesn't mean that they know how to save, invest, and have a game plan. And he was like, you got to be kidding me. I'm like, no. And I've been in the industry for over 25 years at the time. I said, you know what? Maybe we should write a book. And that's what we decided to do.
Wow. I'm going to come back to something you said.
Sure.
But before I get to that, I want to know, from the question that we start off with, what can the actual young adults do about the situation that we talked about at the beginning, about feeling broken and even having a good income? What can they do about that?
Well, you know, there's an old saying that doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome, is insanity. And that is so true with anything.
I agree.
So, you know, it's one of those, we talk about in the book, an STL moment, a stop, talk, and listen, and get some advice. And that's where the book comes in handy to get you on the right road toward financial freedom. And we talk about financial freedom, Johnny, in a way that not everybody's goal is to save millions of dollars and be the richest person in the graveyard when they die. Some people have life's trade-off balances. They want to be a good steward of the money. They want to be comfortable. Well, what defines comfortable? And we talk about in the book having a visualization process. You know, what does success for you and your family look like? And how do you get there? And if you have a game plan, I mean, we're in the Midwest, and we know where you're down south, Johnny, and to get to California is not too hard. You just kind of go west, and you'll eventually hit it. But if you actually map it out and have a GPS and some idea where you're going to stop and have a rest stop, it takes the anxiety out of things. Like, we have a game plan. If we get derailed, then we've got a game plan for that as well. And we really find that not only do people walk away with having a game plan, but a sense of clarity and purpose, that what I've done in the past is concrete. It's done. The future is clay, and we can mold it any way we want to. And we talk about in the book having those simple principles that will get you towards your financial freedom, your goals. And it's a lot simpler than what most people would think.
And maybe if I can just
Wow.
tag on to
Absolutely.
what
Absolutely.
Mark was saying, one of the things that we tried to do, you're asking about how do they get on that path? Well, we lay that out really step by step in the book. That was that was our goal, is ultimately, it's in the title, to make it as simple as possible. So it starts off with believing that you can do it, the power of positive thinking, and just like have confidence in this. And then we talk about budgeting, and then we lay out a scenario where Pat, who is just fictitious person who's not making $100,000 a year, and how they can get on that path by following some of the tools that we've gotten there, including as we call it, the 50-20-30 model, and just setting aside a little bit of money in the stock market, kind of repeating what it's done, but just sort of lay out all those steps that Pat can become a millionaire in about 20 years. And the fact that Pat will contribute about a quarter of that, and the free money, so 401k matches and stock market returns, things along those lines, will be 75% of it. Kind of is the kicker in this as well. And that was one of the things when I first sat down with my daughter, and she was like, wait, I don't have to save $1 million to have $1 million. And so it lays out all those steps in a very basic format, just kind of step by step what you need to do.
Nice. And I guess the good thing about it, everybody likes stuff that's simple, right? You really don't like nothing that's complex and you're trying to figure it out. If you lay it out like a roadmap and anybody can follow it, everybody likes simple. And you mentioned, and I like also what you said too, when you talk about Mark, you got to kind of have a plan, because if you aim at nothing, most of the time you're gonna hit nothing, right?
Right.
But if you have a plan, that's like a target, and you can actually hit your target if you actually planned it out. So I like that. So with that, you mentioned in the question earlier about, you talked to business owners, and they didn't even have like a plan. And I was kind of shocked by that, because you're thinking if they own a business or whatever, they would actually have a plan when it comes to like maybe investing, saving, finances, whatever. Um, so how did you guide them back on path when you actually met somebody like that? And I'm sure you probably met a lot, sound like.
It seems like a lot of people work really hard in their business, doing the hard work, and very few times do they step back and work diligently on their business. And a lot of times you get to the end of the year, most business owners talk to their accountant, CPA. What should I do for taxes? Throw a bunch of money in a 401k, throw a bunch of money in IRAs, try to defer taxes that way. And they stumble across saving money, and then they may have a couple relationships with some brokers, and they get called and like, okay, here's 10 grand, here's 40 grand. I got some extra money in savings. But I never really ever see a consistency of a plan where, hey, everything that we earn in the business, we're going to set aside a certain percentage for the owner benefit, withdraw that. I mean, a lot of times business owners are swimming. And so it's going out of the business just as fast as it's coming in the business. But sometimes you got to stop and really look at, you got to take care of yourself for the future. But sometimes the business owners, their mindset is to grow and then someday have a liquidation event and sell their business. And that's fine too. If it works out that way, then they do sell their business. They're like, what do we do with all this money? And that's when you got to have those financial talks as well, because you got to live within your means and look at your goals and your settings. Do you want to set things up for charity? Do you want to set things up for your children, grandchildren? And let's have that plan. And it's almost foreign to a lot of business owners, even with their own business. It seems like the mentality I get with a lot of successful business owners is you just work really hard in your business. and do what you're supposed to do every day, and things will work out. And if it does, it's great. But then, sometimes there's business owners that have a lifestyle business. So if they're not in the business working, there is no business per se.
Right.
And they find themselves, there's nothing to sell. I mean, we got machinery, we got inventory, but if I'm out of the business, you're done. And so hopefully we catch those people early to have a consistent process to take care of yourself for the future as well.
We talk about too, though. Mark opened my eyes to this because he's got some customer. I just assume anybody that's got a financial advisor is obviously probably on a pretty good path in terms of savings. But he was opening my eyes to the number of folks that have good paychecks, either business owners or, as he was mentioning earlier, doctors or lawyers or things like that, make good salaries, but just hadn't saved. They just were living paycheck to paycheck from when they started, and just their lifestyle creep kind of kept going with their salary increases. So we've got a section in the book that is called Late in the Game that actually addresses that, to where even if you're not doing it right out of school or in the first 5 or 10 years, you can still catch up pretty early in those late years. And there's some advice toward the end of our book, which probably is a good mention, that our book ages as we all age. So the beginning is kind of right out of school, setting up the budget, all the stuff I talked about.
Perfect.
And then we have when life gets more complicated in the middle of it. So that starts touching on life insurance, and maybe you have a mortgage and saving for college and things like those, like for your kids. And then Late in the Game is the last part of the book.
Perfect. So when you was writing your book, and I know it sounds like a lot of good information, financial literacy in your book. So when you was writing it, who did you have in mind when you was writing your book?
We had in mind that 18 to 24-year-old, really. And that was our initial thought. And it still is our niche. And what we like about how the book turned out is that we were getting a lot of advice and getting some questions back, or answers back for the questions we would ask to people in that demographic. My take on it, which surprised Steve, is a lot of times there's not enough education in the home, the household, because the parents don't know exactly what to teach and how to teach the principles. And I mean, even my family, nothing wrong with that. I was taught early on, you just work hard. You start mowing grass when you're 12, you become a lifeguard, you keep on mowing grass, and you go get a job at the shoe store, whatever it is to make money.
Mm-hmm.
But there was no actual talk about how you save and what you save it in. And I only thought CDs were things I put in the dashboard of my car. That's all I really know what that was. I had a lot of those. But then I said, Steve, I think really my angle is, and I tested it with some of my clients, I gave out about 100 books around Thanksgiving, about this time, a few months after the book was released, giving it to some of my clients that have children or grandchildren. Hey, here's a book. Feel free to get passed out to somebody in your family, that a child or a grandchild, for example. And a lot of my clients decided to read the book. Just a little bit over 200 pages. Like, there's some things in there we had no idea. And I wish we would have known this. And then they give it to their child or grandchild. So I think also everybody, like Steve mentions late in the game, there's something, this book grows with people by age, but a lot of adults can benefit from reading this book, because there are principles in there that do apply to people across the board, even when it comes to estate planning, which that estate planning is not just for the ultra rich. It's for anybody who's got assets that they want to carry out to the next generation.
We were even talking, we've had plenty of feedback from parents that have used it, not only passing it on to their kids, but actually using it as the guidebook, like sitting down with them and kind of going section by section, because it makes it easier in terms of trying to explain things. I always make the comparison of teaching my kids how to drive. I knew how to drive, but I didn't know how to teach them how to drive. And I think the book might be another one. Some people may know nothing, in which case the book will help them. But some people know kind of the basics, but they're like, how do I teach it to my kids? And so you can follow the book as sort of a guidebook to be able to teach them how to invest and things along those lines.
Yeah.
Wow, nice. So I know also in your book, you mentioned that you also have forewords from Will Ferrell. So how did y'all get him to come and contribute to the book?
Will is a good friend of mine, actually, going back to college. So we were pledge brothers together. a few years ago, not that many.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so
This is
we've
pretty
remained
good.
friends over the years. And so it's an area that I know he's passionate about. His kids are about my kids' age, and teaching financial literacy is really important to him. And so we asked, and he was gracious enough to lend the foreword
Wow.
to us.
Wow. That's pretty nice to have him have forewords in the book. That's so audience, Will Ferrell has forewords in The Simple Road to Financial Freedom. So I would recommend go out and pick up the book because it sounds like a really good book to help you kind of guide you through the whole process from start to finish. So I would recommend to pick up the book.
Thank
So
you. It's a funny
yes,
forward too, as you
yeah,
might expect.
absolutely,
It's actually a good
absolutely.
correlation why not only for the charity that the proceeds, some of the proceeds of the book go towards, that Will is also behind the charity with Steve,
Yeah.
but also, I tell clients that, this is a very serious topic, but it doesn't have to be so serious. I mean, you can actually have fun and actually plan. And there's that one word that people don't like to hear about is called budget. But
Mm,
you can frame things a little bit differently, have some fun with it. And we're not advocating in the book, which is a lot of the feedback that we got from students in high school and college, is that we still want you to have that latte. We don't advocate that you're supposed to eat ramen until you're debt free. And so, or you could have that avocado toast, is what I was told. I've never had it. Anyway, but if you follow one of the principles that Steve mentioned earlier, he mentioned slightly, is the 50-20-30 rule. But a lot of people have
yes.
heard about 50-30-20, and the
Okay.
conventional 50-30-20, 50% of what you earn is for the things you need in life, food, shelter, etc. Then 30% your wants, and then 20% savings. Well, we're putting the priority of take care of your what you need, save 20%, and like Steve mentioned, 20% can come from employer match. It can come from your own contribution, put money in. And part of that 20%, people are like, well, I don't know where to save it at. I can't do 20%. Well, can you do 1%? Well, of course. All right, can you do 4? What is that number you can do to, and then plus the match? And don't worry about it. I really personally, it's up to everyone's risk tolerance and what they do with their money. But don't get so hung up on how to invest it that you don't do anything. I mean, even put it in a money
Absolutely.
market or a CD or certificate of deposit. I found out one time that sometimes can be just the motion and action of accumulating that 20%. And then 30%, go have fun, vacations, car purchases, etc. We still want you to have a lifestyle, but if you find yourself that you don't need 30%, then look, you're going to get towards your goals a little bit quicker by saving even more than 20%.
Nice. Nice breakdown. Thank you for that because and audience that's in the book. So again, sounds like a really good book. So my next question would be, since you said the book was really focused on the younger generation, even though it's for everybody, what are some of the common mistakes that you kind of see with the younger generation when it comes to their money? What are some of the common mistakes?
I think inaction is probably the one that we see the most, just
Okay.
paralysis of like
Um,
not knowing what to do. And I know I need to save, but I'll do that next year. And to Mark's point, which is spot on, pick a number. If it's not 20%, is it 1%? Is it 5%?
yeah.
And start that process and hopefully get hooked on it, that you're like, oh, that really wasn't that bad. So maybe next year I double it and just kind of just start that process. That's usually the hardest.
I think fear and maybe not understanding history, because there's a lot of
Mm,
I've heard a lot of I have no, this isn't like fact, but this is what my experience has been hearing from kids that were born like in 1990,
hmm
1992, 1993, and then they're about ready to go to college. And when 2008 happened, and you hear about what happened with, the market correcting in some instances 38%, 40%, the market didn't fully recover for 3 to 4 years. It was painful for a lot of families when they
was.
saw their savings drop almost in half. And I can only
Hmm
imagine what was being talked about around the kitchen table at night. And, got the 401k statements, and mom and dad saw 200,000 drop to 110 or 400,000 go to 200,000, whatever the numbers are. That's scary. But then when things recover, I think a lot of families don't go back to say, look what history just did.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at Black Monday and when the markets, did some really nasty things during the Great Depression in 1929. But in 1930 it was a great year. The market was up huge. But we always talk about the bad year, 1929. So I think the fear of doing something, along with inaction because of fear, that the book will help provide some education. And I think, history doesn't always repeat itself, but it has consistently rhymed over the years. It sounds pretty similar.
We go through that in the book too, in terms of just laying out how can you protect yourselves from those. The market's going to go down. It's just the ebb and flow of the way it works. But
Absolutely.
we talk about the 3-bucket system in terms of how we suggest one option for people out there is just put your money into one of 3 different buckets: short-term money within the next 2 years, safety, not stock, so it's not going to crash, and then 2 to 5 years, we kind of lay out some stuff there, and then 5+ years, and try to be diligent if you can. And I even talk to my kids and their friends about this now when the stock market goes down like it did earlier this year. And it's like, oh my gosh, the stock market's down. And it's like, well, you're not retiring, as far as I know, for 45 years. So let's just it's in your 401k. Don't worry about it. And so or maybe that's too long, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, don't worry about it. And in fact, all the investments you're making now in the S&P 500 and all that are now discounted by 20%. So it's the same companies, the same, great companies that were out there before. It's just now at a discount. So just that mindset. And we really try to get into the book of just like kind of what these things are and maybe some ideas on how you can set it up so you don't get scared. And so you don't do what Mark probably saw plenty of times. Every time the market drops a big amount, people are like, I want to pull out of the market. It's like, no. Have a game plan and stick to that game plan.
You bring up a good point, Steve, because it sounds like a scary number when you brought up 45 years. But if you look at retiring at 68 and you're 23 coming out of college,
right?
45 years. So there's one of two things. One, oh my gosh, like 45 years of working, get a game plan, not to have to work for 45 years. But another take on that, I've got time. I can do it next year, or I can do the year after that. And pretty soon, if you wake up and you're my age, 50, you're like, and I haven't done anything. Well, now you're down to like a short deadline. And so what I love about the book, and Steve mentioned with our character, Pat, is starting early. Let time be an asset to you. And look at that money, how it potentially compounds over time. Then you got some clarity. Then you could be 50 years old and choosing to work, not having to work. And that's a big difference. And a lot of times, sometimes people continue to work because they don't have to. It's a different feeling than having to work.
Yeah, you're right, because when you don't have to work, then you kind of have more enjoyment because you don't have to work, but you're just doing it because you want something to do. Versus I gotta work, and now, oh no, if they start laying off or whatever, I might be in trouble. So you're absolutely correct on that. So, so one of the things that you said, and it's true, that some people might have some hesitation because of fear.
You're listening to another episode of Bartelle's Money Talk. We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors. Take charge of your financial future with Bartelle's Financial Coaching, led by Theresa Bartelle. We offer personalized guidance to overcome debt and achieve financial peace. Our results-oriented approach provides actionable strategies for lasting change, no matter your background. We welcome you to schedule a free consultation today at 830-252-0320. Start your journey towards a brighter financial future today.
How did you get them to like, hey, don't worry, don't have the fear, just take the step in the water and just give it a try? how you help them overcome that
I
fear?
I attempt to overcome it when I'm in that situation with somebody. It doesn't matter what their age is. Tell me more about your fear. Tell me more what you're thinking. Well, the market might crash. Okay, so if the markets go down like they did, like Steve mentioned this year in April 8th was the low of this year. The markets were down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very few people stopped buying iPhones. You would think Apple's going to go out of business. They've got around $600 billion of cash right now. Do you think that people are going to stop waking up every morning and turning the electricity on, or going to the grocery store, or pumping their gas in their car? Is life going to stop? If it does, then I think we're all in the same boat.
We're in trouble.
So let's talk through those fears, because, and people are like, well, I don't trust the market. I don't trust anything. Well, go through a green light. You trust that people are going to stop. We do have some trust out there that we just need to talk about. And, and I think, let's get past that. If your risk tolerance is not to invest in the market, then let's open up a savings account and let's get through that and start building up your savings account. And then maybe when you get your savings built up to an appropriate level, maybe move a little bit of money into a different bucket, like Steve mentioned, and just see how it works. And you'll know which companies potentially you choose to own, and we'll track those companies and just ease them into it.
Nice. That's great advice. Anything from you, Steve?
Mark's definitely got more experience at this than me, meeting with customers and talking to them versus me. But I'm still a little bit amazed in terms. I just saw a stat earlier that 2 out of 3 employees feel financially stressed. And so that's a huge number when you think about it.
It is.
And one of the things that Mark and I have been doing are presentations to businesses and universities, trying to alleviate some of that. Because obviously a stressed employee, the stat also was the stressed employees are 2 times more likely to be job hunting. So employers don't want that in terms of retention and things along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not as productive. They're spending 3 to 7 hours a week on personal finance stuff instead of their job. And so we've heard loud and clear from businesses and universities, but really businesses are like, we'd love to have you come in and talk to our employees about this, because this is a great topic that unfortunately people can always learn more of, that they just a lot of times weren't gifted with this knowledge. And hopefully we can change that narrative. The other one that Mark and I talk about all the time that drives us crazy is the Gen Z, the folks right out of college or right out of high school getting a career, is they can never afford to have a family. They can never afford to have a house. And it's definitely different than where it's been in the past. But I think a lot of that is just when people start with the habits that they don't know any other way and start living paycheck to paycheck, it is really hard to afford a house. But I think there's tools and tricks, and tricks isn't really the right word. There's tools that are in the book that can help them get on that path to start saving and be able to still buy the house and still have the American dream, so to speak.
Yeah. And you're right. Because most time, everybody really want to own a home, not necessarily rent all the time. They want to experience that home ownership. And without properly having your finances properly managed, then it's kind of hard to experience that. Especially, you know, for a while now, home prices have been really high and interest rates been really high. And so if you don't manage your money well, then it'll be really hard to experience that.
And it's going to take years of, as we all know, it's going to take years of savings for that. So you can't just, decide to start saving after you've been working for 10 years. And I mean, some people could, but and immediately go buy a home. There has to be a process with it. But it's what we're trying to change with the book and through our presentations is change that. There's not a lot of books that are out there on this topic. It was another reason we wrote the book. There's a lot of books that are out there where people are trying to sell somebody on, being a customer of Mark's. Well, Mark's didn't write this book to gain a bunch of Gen Z new customers. It's not his target market. This is purely a passion project for us. And the more that we can impact one person at a time, we love reading the Amazon reviews. And every time we get a good review, we just had one earlier today that was like, that's what works. That's why we did it. So, I paid off $10,000 in loans by following stuff in your book. I started reading the book and I put it down, talked to my wife, and immediately took action because there's so much good stuff. I didn't want to finish the book. I wanted to start on some of these almost chapter by chapter. Those are the things that fire us up and make us. It took a couple years to write the book, but we find it really rewarding after seeing some of those comments.
Sounds very impactful, and that's what you really want. If you get those comments like that, that's you're impacting people's lives to change them for the better. So that's wonderful. So if you have this young person starting out and they're wanting to build wealth, how do they go about doing it? How do they automate their money to like build wealth? Because that's one of the goals. So how do they do that?
Yeah, so great question, and we really encourage people to get started. And so there's instructions in the book of what you do to get started and to set things up on autopilot. So even like $25 a month, some financial institutions like we mentioned Schwab or Fidelity, that you can set up the account, do it yourself online, and set up that you have consistency coming into the account, and then you get an investor, just keep it in whatever fixed interest or whatever you want to put it in. But also then to take a step back and, what are you spending money on? And so where are those holes in your budget that you need to start working towards that 20%? And so a fun thing that we talk about in the book, at least I think it's fun because people tell me that they're like, wow, I wish I could do this over, is pull out the last 3 months of your credit card transactions. And if you could like just tap on which ones you would like to redo, like I didn't need that, I didn't need that, I didn't need that, it could be a sizable amount of money. And so we talk about delayed gratification because I think a lot of people are willing to pass up on what the media is trying to sell us on the next great thing if they have a passion and a goal that they're working towards. And so a lot of times people tell us, hey, we read your book and you're right. I look at, is this next purchase something I need or is it something I want? And they're like, well, it's something I want. And is it moving me closer to my goal or further away from my goal that I wrote down? And it allows people to take a stop and stop and listen to yourself moment to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to practice delayed gratification. We're going to move on. And so, but again, it's all that, it's life balance as well. But Steve talks about the inaction. I think starting and watching $25, $50 a month build up. And then eventually you wake up one day and there's 5,000 and 10,000. And then the snowball just kind of seems to get bigger and bigger. And then they start seeing progress. So the book goes into a lot of steps about, we got to take a step back. Do you have any outstanding credit card debts that we need to be mindful of and have a balance there and have a game plan to pay those off? But as with any debt, just stop adding to it. And then let's take care of the situation.
Nice. Steve?
One other thing that just sort of pops in my head is along the same lines is we have a part in there that it's only $400 a month. It really could apply to anything. And it's really what Mark was talking about. That all of a sudden you have recurring charges that are on your credit card that you wish you could hit the button to undo it. But there's probably plenty of things we've all done over the years that you justify at the time. And we get into this in the book to say, really think long and hard about these purchases that are the gifts that keep on giving. So you buy something, let's say it's not an appreciating asset, maybe like a home, but some toy or something like that, like a whatever. And it's only $400 a month and you justify it to yourself. And the next thing you know, you're paying that $400 for the next 5 years or whatever it is. And then 9 months from now, you forget about that $400 a month. And there's a new thing that's out there. And you're like, well, this one's only $300 a month. I can do that. No problem. And then you're snowballing, but in the wrong way in terms of accumulating, you're raising, as I say in the corporate world, you're raising your break even, your costs are going up. And so really thinking long and hard about those purchases. And it's really tied into exactly what Mark said in terms of hitting the redo button. The bigger the purchase, the longer maybe you should wait to make that purchase. So if it's a small purchase, no problem. If it's something that's a couple $100s, maybe you give yourself a day or two before you make that purchase. If it's something that's going to be a monthly recurring thing of hundreds of dollars, maybe you give yourself a week to think through it, to go, do I really want to do this? And maybe your mindset will change before you make that purchase.
Nice. Okay. Well, this right here is like one of the gold nugget type questions I got to ask, because if I don't ask this, I think the audience will not know, and some members in the audience may not know. And this is like a gold nugget question. So I see where you mentioned that 1 in 7 people have like this unclaimed money out there, right? So how would you go out there and grab this unclaimed money? How would they get that money if they see if they have any unclaimed money?
You just got to ask.
Just
No,
gotta
you have
ask.
to. There is, unbeknownst to most people, we found out through research and doing the book, and we have the step-by-step stuff in the book. But there are each state has its own unclaimed property division. And so generally what happens is, say an insurance company mails a check for whatever, you overpaid your insurance on something, or you canceled them and they mailed you a rebate check, whatever the case may be. And you move and they can't find you, or your parents did this. Lot easier now with electronic communication and email. In our parents' generation and the generation for that, grandparents, it was obviously postal mail. And so that money cannot stay with the insurance company. That actually has to go back to the consumer. And if they can't find the consumer, then it goes to the state and just sort of sits there. And so we sort of roll step by step through that in the book, what you can do, where you go. You have to prove that it's yours. So you have to prove with ID and things along those lines. Or if it's a parent, you have to actually show death certificates and all that. But it can be a big windfall. We've heard from a lot of people, a couple $1,000s in terms of like just unknown that it was out there. And it's definitely worth an investigation of maybe 15 minutes to look it up. And you want to do multiple states. If your parents lived in multiple states or your grandparents lived in multiple states, it's definitely worth the time to look into it.
And most
Nice.
of the states I've been to help people out with this, you can put anybody's name in. I mean, it's public information. So if you want to check for your parents, check on your kids, and give them a heads up, hey, I followed the processes in the book and found your name. You may want to file a claim.
Nice. Yeah,
Do it
everybody
around.
wants some unclaimed
We
money.
recommend doing it like around the holidays. It could save you from having to give a gift to a loved one. It's right there. I found it for you.
It's regifting.
Hey, I found some
Yeah, then you put
free
that
money.
towards your 20%.
Right.
Hey. So
Or your 30.
Steve, Mark, listen, great conversation. If someone would like to reach out to you to say if they wanted some help to kind of get on track, how would they go about doing that?
They can reach out to us at info@simpleroadbook.com. There's also, if you go to our website, we've got some tools and money guides that are on there, some videos that talk about, we post stuff on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. And we're excited that we also should mention, but we're really proud of the work that we did with the book. We're excited that it's an Amazon bestseller. And we're excited that we've got an audiobook coming out that Mark and I recorded and hopefully sounded okay. But Will was nice enough to record as well. We've got that coming up shortly, or getting released shortly. But the website's really the best way to get in touch with, or the info@simpleroadbook.com.
Yeah, and we do have one request. I mean, we do have a goal, not only to raise money for Cancer for College.
Oh yeah,
with book sales, millions of dollars given in scholarships to cancer survivors, amputees, but an ask that we do have, and we're hoping to see Johnny's initials or something to identify him as an Amazon user. But a review on Amazon is very helpful. A 5-star review. It's very simple to do.
Yes, it is.
Very few books get the reviews that we've had so far, but we do have a goal. to hit the 100 mark and plus get to 300. And so that's something we do ask to kindly look at giving us the Amazon review.
It helps. It
Nice.
helps the algorithm for Amazon, as most people probably don't know. But when people type in personal finance book or best personal finance book for recent graduates, things along those lines, the books, as we understand it, a lot of it's not published, but as we understand it, the books that have 100 reviews are the ones that go to the top. So we're always saying, if you can leave us a review, you're not necessarily helping us, but you're really helping that future person out there that hasn't heard of the book, hasn't heard the podcast, things along those lines, to get them on the path to financial freedom. And then just touching on Mark's point real quick, because I don't know if we mentioned it earlier, on the Cancer for College, a portion of all proceeds of the book sales, we also have an ebook available as well.
Nice.
A portion of all sales go to a charity by the name of Cancer for College, which provides need-based college scholarships to cancer survivors. And as Mark noted, it's about $1 million a year to cancer survivors, fulfilling their
Nice.
dreams to be able to go to college. And so, charity that I'm really have been deeply involved with, started by a fraternity brother of mine that's a 3-time cancer survivor and double amputee. And so it's a great cause. And so know that when you buy that book, a portion of proceeds are going toward that as well.
Nice. Thank you for that. And audience, again, the book is Simple Road Financial Freedom. Again, go out, get the book. It's on Amazon. Sound like they're gonna have multiple versions, hardback, audio, ebook. So it's definitely sound like it's worthwhile. So again,
Thanks, Joe. I was just going to mention, if they go to our website, we actually have a friend's discount on there in
there it is, even better.
It's better for them, and it's better. There's more funding that we can put to Cancer for College, because obviously we don't have the middlemen involved in that one. But
Yes, absolutely.
your favorite outlet, whatever it is, we just want to get it into people's hands.
And Johnny, one thing, we'll leave it at this. I know we're running out of time, but we do, yes, we can offer you bulk pricing on like drop shipments of 25, 50, et cetera. So if you ever have somebody that's interested in bulk pricing to speak to their companies or to have the bulk pricing, they can contact us through the website as well for special bulk pricing.
All right. Thank you for that, Mark. All
You
right,
bet.
Steve, Mark, listen, this has been a great conversation. Thank you for joining Bartelle's Money Talk to have this wonderful conversation, because I think, a lot of time the younger generations seem like they are forgotten. So I really like that y'all wrote a book to kind of guide them early on. So when they do get that 40 or 50 mark, they can look back and say, ooh, I don't really have to work anymore if I don't want to. So thank you for that. And listen, audience, if you like this content, please like, share, and subscribe. And we look forward to having you again on Bartelle's Money Talk. Until next time, have a good evening and God bless.
Thanks, Johnny.
Thanks, Johnny.
That's all for today's episode of Bartelle's Money Talk. We hope you found our discussion insightful and empowering.
If you want to stay connected and access more tips and resources, don't forget to subscribe to Bartelle's Money Talk on your preferred podcast platform.
And please consider leaving us a review. Your feedback helps us improve and reach more listeners like you.
For even more financial guidance and exclusive content, visit our website at bartellscoaching.com.
Until next time, remember, the journey to financial freedom is within reach.
I'm Theresa.
And I'm Johnny Bartelle, signing off. Take care, and here's to your financial success.